Dad said, "No pie for your son, bad attitude today." My sister's kids licked their plates clean. I smiled, took my girl's hand and left. At 9:10 p.m. Dad wrote, "Mortgage due tomorrow, don't be late." I didn't get angry. I just announced one thing that made him freeze. My dad looked directly at my son and said it like it was some kind of final judgment. "No pie for you. Bad attitude today." There was silence around the table. My sister's kids were already halfway through their second slices. Whipped cream smeared on their cheeks. My mom didn't say anything, just stood by the sink like she hadn't heard it. Melissa smiled awkwardly and told her youngest to slow down before he choked. Liam didn't say a word. He just blinked, pushed his plate slightly forward like maybe it would help, and then sat back again. He was 9. And he'd spent the last hour being polite, quiet, even helping my mom unload groceries when we first got there. If anything, he was trying too hard. But still, Dad found something to pick on. It wasn't new. Just louder this time. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't ask why or try to fight the ridiculous accusation. I just stood up, picked up Liam's jacket and held out my hand. He slid out of his seat without a word. My husband looked at me, then at my father, and followed us out. No one stopped us. No one asked where we were going. In the car, Liam finally spoke. "Did I do something wrong?" I told him no. That some people just forget how to be decent. We got home, put Liam to bed and tried to let it go. But at 9:10 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dad. "Mortgage due tomorrow. Don't be late." That was it. Not a word about dinner. Not a mention of Liam. Just business as usual. As if he hadn't humiliated my son 2 hours earlier. I sat there looking at the screen and something in me finally settled. Not snapped. Settled. Like a final piece sliding into place. I showed the text to my husband. He didn't say anything. He knew what I was thinking. This had been building for a long time. I replied, "Let your other lovely daughter pay your bills." And I turned my phone off. It wasn't about the pie. That was just the last little crack. Things hadn't been right for years, ever since Melissa had her first kid. My dad had always liked to rank people. Who was more successful, who was more respectful, who was the better family. Once my sister had children, it was like Liam didn't exist anymore. Every birthday, Melissa's kids got cards stuffed with money, giant gifts, attention. Liam got silence. If we brought it up, my dad had an excuse ready. Forgot. Busy. Didn't know what Liam was into. He knew what my nephew wanted for Christmas down to the color of the controller. And still I paid his mortgage. Because when Mom asked for help, she always framed it like it was temporary. Just until they get back on their feet. Just until the refinancing goes through. Just until Dad's pension kicks in. But the pension never kicked in. The refinancing never went through. And temporary turned into 3 years of automatic payments from my account. 3 years of watching my son get treated like an outsider in the house I grew up in. And somehow my father still thought he had the right to look him in the eye and say no pie. After I sent that message, "Let your other lovely daughter pay your bills," I turned off my phone and left it off the rest of the night. My husband and I watched a movie, tried to distract ourselves, but we both knew something had shifted. Not just for the night. For good. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I think I was just tired of pretending things were fine. Tired of hoping it would eventually go back to how it used to be before Melissa had kids and everything changed. The next morning my phone had 5 missed calls from my mom. No message from my dad. Not even a question about the mortgage. Just silence. By the end of the week, the silence turned into something else. My mom called during my lunch break and asked if I could talk. She didn't even mention the pie incident. Just jumped straight into it. "Your father says the bank called. We're behind. He thought you were covering it." I said I wasn't. I told her I'd taken care of it long enough. She sighed, said things had been stressful lately, that Dad's been under pressure, that he didn't mean anything by what he said at dinner. Didn't mean anything. I told her he did mean it. He meant it enough to say it out loud in front of everyone. And no one corrected him. No one even looked surprised. He said I was overreacting. So I told her exactly what I'd been holding in for months. That I wasn't going to keep pouring money into a house where my son wasn't welcome. That if they needed help, maybe Melissa and her perfect family could pitch in for once. Mom didn't like that. She said Melissa has her hands full with 3 kids. I said I have 1 kid. But who gets treated like a stranger at every family gathering. After that, there was quiet again. A few days, then a week. Then I got a text from my dad. Short. Well, don't bother coming around anymore. You've made your choice. So be it. That was it. No signature. No sign off. Just exile by text. And still it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Because deep down I knew this wasn't about me being a bad daughter. This was about him deciding somewhere along the way that I owed him something. That love and respect were conditional. Transactional. Based on what I gave, not who I was. I didn't answer. I deleted the message and blocked the number. But it wasn't over yet. Not even close. 2.5 months later, I was driving home from work when my mom called again. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to. He was crying. She said my dad was in the hospital. Something with his heart. He'd collapsed in the backyard. The mortgage still hadn't been paid. They were months behind. The stress had built up. Then she said, "We need you, Camila." When my mom said those words, "We need you, Camila," I didn't answer right away. I just sat there in my parked car outside the grocery store, the engine still running, watching people walk by with bags and carts like life was normal. I hadn't spoken to my parents in over 2 months. I'd missed Thanksgiving at their house for the first time in my life. My son had stopped asking why we didn't visit Grandpa anymore. I thought that was a sign we were finally moving on. But now, suddenly, it was an emergency. I asked what hospital he was in and Mom told me. Her voice was shaking, but she didn't sound desperate. More guilty. Like she knew what she was asking. I told her I'd think about it, and she whispered that Dad had been asking for me. That he said everything had gotten out of hand. For a brief second, I wanted to believe that maybe he'd realized what he'd done. That maybe almost losing everything made him see how wrong he'd been. The next morning I went. When I walked into his hospital room, Mom was sitting in the chair by his bed, eyes red. Dad looked older, not just sick but smaller. His skin was pale, his hair messier than I'd ever seen it. For a second I almost forgot all the anger. He looked like a stranger who used to be my father. He turned his head toward me. Didn't say hello. Didn't ask how Liam was. His first words were, "So you finally decided to show up." I stood by the door. Didn't move closer. Mom told me he'd had some sort of heart episode. The stress, the bills, the constant calls from the bank. He'd almost lost the house. Then he looked straight at me. "You did this." I felt the air go out of the room. He said if I just paid the mortgage like I was supposed to, they wouldn't be in this situation. That the hospital bills wouldn't even be an issue if I hadn't turned my back on them. He said my sister had been helping as much as she could. That Melissa had always been a decent, grateful daughter. The words hit the same way they always did. Not loud but cutting. The kind that leave a bruise you can't show anyone. I asked him if he really thought that's why I stopped helping. If he truly couldn't see how cruel he'd become. How he treated Liam like he wasn't part of this family. He scoffed. Said Liam just needed to toughen up. That kids shouldn't expect to be treated like royalty. I realized then that nothing had changed. Not the heart scare. Not the debt. Not the silence between us. He was still the same man who told my son he didn't deserve pie. Still the same father who saw me as his safety net and Melissa as his golden child. So I told him I was sorry he was sick. But that I wasn't the one who did this to him. He'd done it to himself, with every cruel word, every bit of favoritism, every time he made my son feel small. I said goodbye and walked out before he could answer. Mom followed me into the hallway, begging me not to leave like that. She said he just needed time, that he didn't mean what he said. But I'd heard that line my whole life. And this time I wasn't buying it. When I got home, my husband was waiting on the porch. He didn't ask what happened, just opened his arms and I fell into them. That night I looked at Liam while he was sleeping. He was peaceful, clutching his favorite old blanket, unaware of how complicated everything around him had become. And in that quiet moment I decided something. My father had made his choices. Now I was making mine. After the hospital visit, I didn't hear from either of my parents for almost 3 weeks. Not a text, not a call, not even a forwarded bill. It was like that whole conversation, everything I said in that room had never happened. I guess I thought maybe that would be it. That we'd just drift into silence and maybe that was how things ended. Not with forgiveness. Not with screaming. Just a slow disappearance. But then on a Wednesday night after work, my mom showed up at my house. She didn't call first. Just knocked. I was still in my work clothes. Liam was doing homework in the kitchen and my husband was finishing dinner. I opened the door and there she was, holding a folded envelope and a tote bag like she wasn't sure which role she was playing. Mother, messenger, or beggar. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She asked if I had a minute. I said 5. She didn't cry this time. She looked exhausted. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a notice from the bank. Foreclosure proceedings. The house I grew up in was officially on the chopping block. I handed it back to her. She started talking about family, about history, about how my father had worked his whole life to provide for us. How hard it's been for them since retirement. How Melissa's trying but has her own problems. Then she said it. The sentence that had been hovering over this whole mess. You're the only one who can fix this. Not help. Not support. Fix. Like this was mine now. Like I'd inherited responsibility because I dared to be stable while my sister floated around like a permanent guest in life. I told her I wasn't doing it. I said I had my own family to protect now. My own son to put first. That maybe if Dad had treated Liam like a grandchild instead of a burden, I'd feel differently. But he hadn't. He'd pushed him out in small, sharp ways until there was no space left for him at all. He said he was just old-fashioned. Set in his ways. I said he was cruel. Consistently. That it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. Then she begged me. Not for money. For peace. She wanted us to fix it. She wanted me to come back to the family. To forgive him. He said he was scared. Said he might not be around much longer. And I told her something I'd never said before. I said I don't have a father anymore. Not the kind I want my son to learn from. Not the kind who shows up, who protects, who loves unconditionally. My son's grandfather is the man who looked him in the eye and denied him a slice of pie like it was punishment. And then blamed his own daughter for not being a good enough bank. She looked like I'd slapped her. But I didn't take it back. I couldn't. Then I asked her something that had been sitting with me since I left the hospital. I asked if she ever stood up for us. Did she ever once say, "You're being too hard on Camila," or "You're being unfair to Liam," or "Stop asking her for money when you treat her like a stranger"? She didn't answer. Just turned her eyes to the ground. I told her she didn't have to answer. That silence was loud enough. Then I walked back into my house and closed the door. Liam looked up from the kitchen table and I smiled at him like everything was fine. Because for once it actually felt like it might be. My husband came over, handed me a glass of water and said we'd done the right thing. His parents had already invited us over for Thanksgiving. Said Liam could help make the stuffing like he did last year. They never treated him like anything less than family. From day one. And sitting there watching my son laugh at a dumb video on his tablet, I realized something else. Maybe blood isn't what makes someone family. Maybe it's who shows up. Who sees you. Who makes sure your kid gets the damn pie. 2 days after my mom came by, my sister sent me a text. It said, "You might not make it through the winter. I hope you can live with that." No greeting. No emotion. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked her number. The thing is, Melissa and I weren't always like this. When we were younger, we were close. Sleepovers in each other's rooms, trading secrets, talking about crushes, doing each other's makeup terribly in middle school. But things shifted after Liam was born. I think she saw the attention I got from our parents. The baby showers, the cards, the casseroles, and decided it was a competition. Then she had her first kid and everything changed. Suddenly her children were the future of the family. She didn't say it, but it was in the way Dad lit up when her boys walked in, and barely looked up when Liam spoke. How Mom printed out professional photos of her kids for the hallway frames, but only asked me once for a picture of Liam and never followed up. And still I was the one who stepped up when their bills piled up. I was the one who added their mortgage to my list of monthly payments, right under my own. My husband never complained once. Because he knew what I was trying to do. Keep the family from crumbling. But I wasn't the one who dropped the hammer. Dad did that. With every jab, every dismissal, every time he looked through my son like he wasn't standing there. I never told Liam what was going on. I didn't have to. Kids pick up on energy. He knew who liked him, and who didn't. One night after dinner he asked me point blank, "Why doesn't Grandpa like me?" It hit me harder than anything Dad had ever said. Because Liam wasn't angry. He was just confused. I said sometimes people just don't know how to love right. That it wasn't his fault. And it wasn't. It never was. After that, I made a quiet decision. I was done teaching my son that he had to chase love. Done showing him that family meant putting up with being ignored, insulted, or guilted into service. A few weeks after blocking my sister, Mom called from a different number. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, her voice thick and tired. She said they were going to lose the house. She didn't ask for money this time. He said she was sorry. Said she understood. Then she said something that stuck with me for days. Your father still says you're not his daughter anymore. But I think deep down he's waiting for you to come back anyway. I deleted the voicemail. Because that's the problem. He wasn't waiting for me. He was waiting for the version of me that stayed quiet. That kept paying. That let him humiliate my son and smiled through it. But that version of me is gone. And she's not coming back. One night I asked my husband a question I hadn't voiced before. Do you think I did the right thing? He looked at me like he didn't even understand why I had to ask. You protected your kid. That's the right thing every time. I nodded, but inside I knew something else. I hadn't just protected my son. I'd broken the chain. The one that says daughters owe their father's loyalty even when it hurts. Even when it rots them from the inside. For the first time in my life, I wasn't someone's daughter. And somehow that felt like freedom. The foreclosure went through 2 months later. Quietly. No drama. Just a legal envelope on my doorstep one afternoon with my maiden name printed on the front. Because I'd been the emergency contact on the mortgage paperwork for years. I stood there in the cold holding it like it was some kind of strange obituary. The house I grew up in was gone. I didn't tell Liam. He didn't ask. He hadn't mentioned my parents in weeks. One day in early March, my husband's mom invited us over for dinner. She made Liam's favorite, chicken enchiladas with rice and beans, and let him mash the avocados for guac even though he left huge chunks. After dinner, his grandpa sat with him on the couch, both of them locked into some science show about black holes like it was the Super Bowl. And I sat at the kitchen table watching this scene that felt so ordinary, and realizing it was everything I'd tried to force out of people who were never willing to give it. There was no scorekeeping here. No quiet punishments. No guilt. Just love, simple and free. My mother called one more time. It was a short call. She said they were staying in a rental near my sister now. He sounded worn out. Said Dad was quieter these days. She didn't ask to see me. Just said she missed me. I said I hoped she was doing okay. That was all. I didn't ask for details. I didn't offer help. I didn't bring up Liam. She didn't either. I hung up and didn't cry. Not because I was cold, but because I was finished. A few weeks later, Liam's school had a Grandparents' Day event. I expected he'd feel awkward. I even offered to keep him home that day. He just smiled and asked if Grandma and Grandpa, my husband's parents, could come instead. They showed up early, dressed up like it was a wedding, brought a bag of donuts for his class, and sat in those tiny chairs like it was nothing. Afterward, one of the teachers told me, "Your son is so lucky. It's clear he's really loved." And that's when it hit me. I didn't lose a family. I built a better one. Not out of obligation or guilt or blood, but out of choice. And Liam? He'll grow up knowing he's enough. That love isn't something you earn or perform for. That he never has to sit at someone's table and feel less than. Not for pie. Not for praise. Not for anything. Because the people who love him, truly love him, make sure there's always a place for him. And always a slice.